Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Plains on the Prairie podcast. I'm Max,
And I'm Sam.
and today we are coming to you live remotely. But we will, just be having the podcast all the same. So, today's episode is focusing on Fargo, North Dakota. No, is it Fargo? No, it's not Fargo.
Nome.
Nome, North Dakota. Excuse me. Nome, North Dakota native Lieutenant Colonel Leland Tommy Molland. We saved, I think, probably the most interesting aircraft for the last one for this series. But yeah, Sam, if you're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, let's dig in. And we actually do have one more next week, but the last World War II one, this will
Yes,
be quite
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah, I forgot to mention. Yep, we did find one more from another war, so we'll share that with you. But
Right.
we'll get started here. So Leland, or Tommy as he went by, was born on May 7th, 1919, in Nome, North Dakota. And again, as we do with every ace, the geography of North Dakota, Nome is kind of south, if I remember, southwest from Fargo.
Yeah, it's kind of, if I remember right, it's kind of down by that Valley City area, just a little south of there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Pretty small town.
Oh, yeah.
He attended high school there, and then after graduation, moved to Fargo, North Dakota, where he attended my alma mater, North Dakota Agricultural College or School, or at the time NDAC, which later became North Dakota State University. He was there from 1937 until December 1941, and then following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Mullen dropped out of college and joined the Army Air Forces. And then he was commissioned on November 10th, 1942 at Moore Field in Texas. So, kind of rings true with a lot of those guys is, they got the news that Pearl Harbor had been bombed and just, dropped everything and enlisted.
Right. No, and that's, we've kind of got a mix of that. A lot of our aces have been people who've joined before too. So this is kind of a little twist on some of the recent ones we've had.
Absolutely. And I couldn't find anywhere that before the war even started that he was really into aviation.
No, I didn't see anything either. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, following training, then Lieutenant Molland was assigned to the 308th Fighter Squadron of the 31st Fighter Group, which at that time was then operating in the Mediterranean theater from bases in Italy. So, as we had mentioned beforehand, the 31st Fighter Squad or Fighter Group is pretty unique in the sense that they didn't fly American-made aircraft. They actually flew. Was it reverse lend lease? Is that the term?
Yeah, they call it reverse lend lease. Really interesting concept. So they were initially equipped with Spitfire Mark 5Bs once they were over there, and that's really interesting. By the 1942-43 timeframe, that's starting. The Mark 9s were starting to come out at that point, so they were almost hand-me-downs, but not really, if that makes sense. But
well, either way, it's, for a lot of people, seeing an American star on a Spitfire is a little weird. And
it
if
is.
you don't know what you're looking at, you might, oh, that's fake or that's a mock-up. But no, it actually happened.
Right. No, and then this is our only Mediterranean theater ace of our series. So
You're
that's
right. Yeah, it is
really interesting. The 12th Air Force did base in North Africa initially before the Sicily landings and all that. Really interesting campaign. There's a whole lot of info here that I just got sidetracked researching on the air war in the Mediterranean, but that's typical, right?
So. Yep, absolutely. So what we were able to find is that Mullen's Spitfire was, like you said, a Mark. Was it an 8 or no?
His was an 8 at least if you go to the museum, you'll see the profile, and that's a Mark 8.
It is.
They were initially equipped with the 5Bs and then transitioned to the 8s.
Gotcha. So he for sure would have flown either one of those versions. Right. And then interestingly, his code was HLK, and he affectionately nicknamed his plane the Fargo Express. Very fitting name, if you ask me, and I think it's probably my favorite of the nose art, that we had on all these North Dakota aces.
Right.
He got his first kill, which was a shared BF-109 on January 16th, 1944. then got his second kill and a third on the 20th and 21st, respectively. On the 20 on excuse me on February 22nd, he shot down a fourth BF 109, and then his final kill, I believe actually that one was his final kill in the Spitfire. And then in April of 1944, when the 308th transitioned to P-51Bs, he scored his first kill in the Mustang on April 21st, and then shot down a fifth BF 109 and a Royal Italian Air Force Machi C202. Did I say that right?
Yep, the C202 Fogler. It's
Yep.
the kind of too little too late fighter that they had, at least before the fall of fascist Italy.
God, have you ever seen one of those in person?
Yes, actually at the Smithsonian Air and
Yep.
Space Museum. It's the
Is
only
that the
one
only
I've seen.
one in? Is that the only one in the United States, or is there one at the Air Force Museum?
I want to say it's the only one, but I don't quote me on that.
Gotcha. So he would go on to down another 5 more enemy planes, which were 4 BF-109s and then a second MC-202 before he was rotated out of combat at near the end of the war. By the end of the war, he had flown 127 missions in the Fargo Express Spitfire and then 40 in the P-51 Mustang. So, 167 missions and, I think, double ace. It's not bad.
No, it's not. And he flew over some very interesting and very pivotal points. Some of his kills were during over Anzio, and we've heard a lot about Anzio, as World War II enthusiasts. Mm-hmm. We had a veteran that would frequent the Air Museum. His name was Conrad Newgren. He passed 3-4 years ago at this point, but he served during the Anzio landings. He was in the U.S. Army there and won the French Legion of Honor medal.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really cool. Learned a lot about the ground side of Anzio, and not somewhere I'd want to be for sure.
No, I've heard that it was a very bloody, vicious, campaign.
And people tend to forget Italy surrendered quickly during the invasions after Sicily. They were pretty much inclined to surrender, but then the Germans didn't. That's their southern flank. They couldn't let that go. But so we have Monte Cassino, all these, Anzio, all these really bloody battles because of the terrain. It wasn't a cakewalk. People think, Italy surrendered in 1943. They must have been a cakewalk to get through. Not at all. Italy was not fully under Allied control at all during the war. And
I don't even think Italy, by the time the war ended, I think Italy, they were still fighting in the Po Valley.
Right. Yeah. They still had the co-belligerent force, and then the Allied side was kind of pitted against each other with, both Germany and the Allies covering for each side. It was really interesting.
Yeah. And it's a very kind of lesser known or lesser talked about campaign. I know, Normandy and stuff like that, that always gets the glory. But, if you're, I, for one, I speak for a lot of people. I really enjoy, airborne forces, paratroopers. And let's just say that both American and, American and, German paratrooper forces really made their history known during the Italian campaign.
Oh, definitely. And then the other operation was Ploesti. All the bombing raids on Ploesti, the Romanian oil fields, really, really important. Those strategic bombing missions were very vital. And there's many reasons the Germans lost the war, right? You can put it against a bunch of things, right? Overstretching of resources, which is another thing. Ploesti held a lot of oil reserves, right? And without oil reserves, you can't really, logistically fight a war. So knocking out those fields was very important. And
absolutely,
they were, the Russians steamrolled through that area and later that year, but knocking them out first was very important.
Absolutely. So getting back to Tommy Molland, Tommy Molland. So after the war, he decided to stay within the Army Air Force and worked his way up to, I believe, Lieutenant Colonel? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And saw combat during the Korean War. And during the initial, I guess first fighting of that war. He was actually the air liaison officer to the U.S. Army's First Cav Division. So pretty neat. I would assume he probably would have been flying, maybe not reconnaissance missions, but targeting for artillery or airstrikes or stuff like that. So kind of a cool role there that you really don't hear that much about.
Well, it gives you the ground perspective a little bit too. I mean, I think that's highly important. Cavalry really wasn't full on, running horses anymore. They weren't running necessarily helicopters yet. And
yeah,
it's really interesting.
So kind of that weird middle ground.
Yeah,
middle ground for him. So let's see. And then after his stint with the First Cav Division, he was then transferred to the 49th Fighter Bomber Group, flying F-80 Shooting Stars and T-33s. So, some of my, now we're getting into my kind of favorite chapter here. And then sadly during a weather recon mission in North Korean held territory, his T-33 crashed into a mountain, unfortunately, and there were no survivors. I know his remains were recovered, and he is now interned in Arlington National Cemetery. So,
did they ever come up with a reason behind the crash? Was it due to weather, or was it due?
Yeah, they said it was poor weather, and they crashed. They just about cleared a mountain, but unfortunately, they didn't. So, yep, and that is the life of Tommy Molland. Right there.
Yeah, short life, unfortunately, but very, very action-packed.
Absolutely. So now we'll move into the 308th Squadron. So the 308th was stood up in early 1942 at Bauer Field in Indiana. And then not long after, in June, was deployed to the European theater, where they were supposed to fly P-39s and P-40s. However, their mission dictated, or not so much dictated, but basically that I think what they were originally wanting to do was bomber escort, but those aircraft weren't either suitable enough, or they just didn't have the required, tools, manpower, stuff like that. So that's when they received the Spitfires. And then since the Spitfires didn't have the long range for bomber escort, at least at that time, their role mostly went to air interdiction, dogfighting, attacking rail yards, stuff like that. And they flew their first mission in August of 1942 against German positions in occupied France. So kind of interesting that they, we associate especially the 308th with fighting in the Mediterranean, but, like most American forces in the early days of 1942, went immediately to England. And I always forget, you think of occupied France before, just after Dieppe failed, and then before D-Day as just, this iron, impenetrable fortress. And they were still flying combat missions, over it almost every day.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't, it's very interesting. I kind of used to have that belief too, between Dieppe and D-Day. Nothing happened. It was just sitting in England. Definitely not.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. So in November 1942, they were transferred to the 12th Air Force, which was in the Mediterranean, and then served with the Operation Torch invasion forces, also in November of 1942. And I believe that some of their first bases that they flew out of were actually Vichy captured, former French bases. So kind of a cruel twist of fate. You're flying over France, and then you're flying from their former bases in Africa. But
it's really interesting. And I actually just read a book about a month ago about the Vichy, the Operation Torch air combat from the perspective of VF-41, the Red Rippers. And that was really interesting, just to see how the French really were indifferent. They wanted to lose, kind of, in a way. They didn't feel good fighting the Americans, and they knew they were, they were caught off guard. And it was really interesting. Kind of getting off track there, but it is interesting to know.
It's very interesting, and it's relevant to where they were fighting. And then, as the well, the Allies progressed further into North Africa. They encountered Rommel's feared Africa Corps. Some of my favorite fight, if you call it favorite fighting, but I think some of the most interesting battles of World War II come from the fighting in North Africa.
Oh, definitely.
Basically.
Very mobile war. I mean, it was just really interesting. All the tank battles. I'm not a big tank guy. I know you are, but
love
El
some
Alamein,
tanks.
watching Greatest Tank Battles as a kid, the El Alamein episode, I can still remember that one. Super cool.
But. Absolutely. So once the fighting in North Africa was finished, they moved into Italy and started fighting during Operation Husky in what I believe that was in July of 1943. Yep. And then what I found was kind of interesting with my own personal connection was the 308th. Once Southern Italy was, basically in Allied hands, they started putting mostly B-24 Liberator units in, basically the boot of Italy, or the southern part of the boot. And that's when the 308th transitioned from Spitfires to P-51 Mustangs, so they could, finally do the role of bomber escort as those Liberators were hitting targets in Central Europe, like France, mostly, I'd assume Germany, and then the Balkans, like you were saying about the Palesti oil raid, literally that exact same topic. So I like to think that, a 308th Fighter Squadron Spitfire probably, well, maybe not since it was on his first mission, but escorted a 779th Bomb Squadron Liberator at some point. So
that'd be really cool.
Little personal connection there.
Oh, yeah.
So, like we had also mentioned, the fighting in northern Italy and the Po Valley continued right up until the end of the war, and that's where the 308th actually ended the war, was flying combat missions in that area. So, when we were talking about it, I think, don't quote me on it, but I swear I've heard a quote or a story that a German officer in the Po Valley got word that the Germans had surrendered. And he couldn't believe it. He's like, "We're winning here. What are you talking about?" But obviously, they didn't see what was happening in Berlin at that time. So
right. I mean, it's all about geography when you're getting into it. Physical geography of that area. It's a natural fortress, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
The Alps. I mean, looking back through history, look at Italy in fighting the Austrians in World War One.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many battles of the 20 battles of the Isonzo, and it's just crazy, that I don't think you could ever win a war there. Like, it's just the attacker couldn't.
No, the defenders are 100%. They have the high ground, literally.
Yeah, and literally, I don't know. I was reading somewhere. Basically, the campaign was to knock Italy out of the war, but then also it opens another front, right? I don't think the Allies really intended on taking all of Italy by the end of the war.
Absolutely. So at the end of the war, the 308th was disbanded. However, they were brought back not long after and flew, various early Cold War jets. They saw combat in Vietnam, flying F-100s, and then they were an F-16 training unit down in the desert of, I believe, Arizona. And today they are a F-35 Lightning training squadron that mainly trains Danish and Dutch Royal Air Force pilots on the Lightning too. So,
really cool.
I was thinking it's kind of maybe not full circle, but you have a European plane as your basically starter plane, and you come flying arguably the most modern U.S. fighter jet for a European Air Force. So,
right.
And that also at one point had flown Spitfires. So kind of a unique little historical connection there.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And yeah, really interesting. I mean, I know we're probably beating a dead horse here, but a lot of these Navy squadrons, for example, they're not around. And it's nice to see another one still living on. And if they only knew about Molland.
Yep, absolutely. Well, our final section is Warbirds, and I think we were talking about it either just before we started recording or right at the beginning, but I don't think there are any American Mark Spitfires.
There might be one, actually. It's I don't know what variant it is. I'm 100% sure it's not a 5B. You know which one I'm talking about. It's got red tips, I think, right? It's
Is
like a
it
dark gray.
airworthy or is it the one that's at the Air Force Museum?
Could be that one.
'Cause it's the one at the Air Force Museum, I believe, is all blue.
Okay.
Or I might be thinking of it. No.
I think there is an airworthy one. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
I've seen, maybe it's repainted. It could be it, but it could be a Mark 8, but I'm fairly certain it's not a 5.
Gotcha. Well, that kind of wraps up our World War II Aces series. We still have one more. But that is the last of our World War II North Dakota Aces. So, Sam, I want to ask you, what did you enjoy the research? Did you have a favorite ace?
I really did. It was the research was really fun. Sometimes it got really extensive, which was really, up both of our alleys, right? We like to kind of find those rabbit holes and run with it. As for a favorite ace, I really don't have one. Some of them are definitely unique. They all are unique in their own way, but Register was interesting because of Guadalcanal. He's our earliest ace, our first ace. Molland's interesting because he's in a Spitfire Reverse Lend Lease. They're all interesting. Cohen with his Eagle Squadron, Borley, how we found him. I found him by just reading a book and his survival story. I mean, I don't have a favorite, but they're all a blast. I mean, I had a lot of fun researching it.
Absolutely.
What about you?
I really enjoyed it. Thank you for being such a great, co-host for it all.
You as well.
Appreciate it. And we just want to let the viewers know that we'll probably be taking a little bit of a break from, actual spoken podcasts like this. We just want to give you guys a break. I know we've been doing this almost weekly. That'll give us time to research, some more interesting topics. We have a couple of couple of hangar visits lined up for this winter, a couple of restoration updates at the museum and elsewhere. But yeah, it's going to be a fun winter. We'll probably pick the talking podcast back up probably sometime in, I think, January. Sounds about good.
Yeah, the next couple months. I mean, we're still planning on bringing weekly content to you guys. We have plenty of content to do. It's just a matter of, lining up schedules to get that done. Hangar visits rely on other people's schedules. But yeah, we've uploaded 2 videos in the last week and a half, and that's been good.
What's going on? Something's happening.
Yeah, it's good. Someone told us, "Oh, I'm glad the videos are back." I mean, I don't know if they were a podcast listener, but they were just really excited to see our channel have action again. We've had a bunch of subscribers sign up, still getting a lot of views on some of our older videos, but if you guys could check out our latest 2 videos, featuring the standard J1, the oldest aircraft in the museum's collection, 106 years old. And then
the oldest airplane in North Dakota.
It is. Yeah, it's crazy. And then we have a video covering the B-25 at the museum with Dave Moan. He's a longtime volunteer at the museum, been there longer than I have. And he just gives a nice little overview on the project. And I don't know if you got put on there, Max, but I got put on their work app there to kind of get updates on what's going on. So it'll be nice to kind of check in on that probably on a monthly basis. If there's enough noticeable differences, we'll for sure share that with everybody.
Yeah, we want you guys to see these progress or see these updates almost in real time. Like, when they put the nose on, we want to be there to capture it. When they repaint the interior, we want you guys to see it. And we hope that you guys seeing these updates to this project, if you're willing, if you have the financial means, if you wouldn't mind, helping these guys out by, maybe donating either your time if you're local, or, if you have the funds, maybe a couple bucks to send their way just so they can, keep this project going. We're really excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah. And we're not in it for anything. We're here just to spread the word for the project and help them out. And, it's nice to see all the group Dave has there is crazy. Like how big it was. I wasn't expecting to hear 45 people a part of this
Right.
project. It's amazing. I mean, if I had more time, I would be there every time.
I agree. I agree. And you know what's it's great is all those guys that and girls that are working with him, they're all almost maybe not experts in their field, but they work along aircraft all day, every day at the Jet Center. And they're motivated to be
Yeah,
there. They're, a great group of people. And I think they're going to do great things with this project.
almost definitely. And yeah, so thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll have one more for you before we take that little hiatus there. So, and I'm sure we'll probably come up with it. You never know. We might have a pop-up episode here and there, just if there's something interesting going on or some talking point. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun the last, was this 11 weeks now, 11 episodes, more than 11 weeks at this point. So it's been,
Wow. I didn't realize it really has been that long, hasn't it?
yeah, I think we started in what, August, that means late August, I believe. So
Wow.
it's been quite the journey.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks
All right.
everybody. We'll catch you next week.
Yep. Take it easy.